In Argentina's extreme northwest, Ariel Arnaldo Ortega was born on the 4th of March 1974. Raised in the Dust Bowl town of Ledesma, the young Ariel idolized River Plate's Ramon Diaz, whom he channeled while practicing his skills on the arid rocky landscape near Bolivia's border. At 16, River singled him out during a scouting tournament they'd set up, and manager Daniel Passarella, who had captained the nation to its first World Cup trophy only a decade prior, ushered him out of his local side and through the doors of the continent's best club. The bashful teen was so obviously gifted in the eyes of Passarella, who took him under his wing as the Jujeño began his senior career, aged merely 17. And debuting against Platense, Ariel set up the winner, repaying the faith of his head coach. Across the next few years in Buenos Aires, the youngster's place in the team grew, mesmerising the Estadio Monumental with his fluid dribbling, driving runs and surgical passing from the number 10 enganche role. At 5'7", his low centre of gravity made him frustratingly agile, slithering past helpless opponents with deceptive body feints and rapid change of direction. With stocky legs, he was electric off the mark, and often, after escaping his marker, there was no catching him. After a short time, he was playing with a level of arrogance on the ball, and his technical quality was only comparable to one man, Diego Maradona, and thus Ortega was burdened with the pressure of living up to the great man, dubbed the next Maradona. In a team that boasted the likes of Enzo Francescoli and Ramon Diaz, Ariel's hero, as well as young prospects like Marcelo Gallardo and Hernan Crespo, River continued perhaps its best run to date, winning the Primera Division 4 times between 1991 and 96, as well as the Copa Libertadores in Ortega's final year. It was midway through this historic stint in December 1994, during the Apertura, that Ortega had his defining moment. With merely 2 matches left, River were completely unbeaten from 17 games, and in remarkable form, their chances at becoming invincible for the first time ever in their 93-year history were strong. Guests to Boca's Bombonera, Orteguita, as the youngster was known, stole the show, winning a penalty inside the first 15 from Francescoli to dispatch, before slipping inside the offside trap and half-volleying it over the keeper. The crowning moment of an unforgettable campaign. By 96, he was on Europe's radar, appearing for La Albiceleste at the US World Cup 2 years prior, starting in the 1996 Intercontinental Cup, which was lost to Juventus, and picking up the silver medal at the Olympics that same year. Following in the footsteps of Diego, whose world record-breaking move to Barcelona had come 20 years prior, Ortega became the most expensive player in Argentine football history with a transfer to Valencia on Spain's southeastern coast. Arriving in March 1997, the season was coming to a close, but Ortega was an instant hit in Spain, ripping apart Sevilla on his superb debut and recording his first 2 goals for his new team. Valencia, Ortega. He seemed to deal well with the pressures of venturing abroad, scoring another 5 times inside the 11 starts he was offered, impressing all from the press to the fans, who attempted to believe his Maradona moniker was a little more than an off-the-cuff comment. A 31-year-old Romario was recalled from his loan that summer, highly valued by Jorge Valdano for his lethal eye for goal, and with the injection of South American talent, Valencia had a whole bunch of promise. During the final game of an excellent pre-season, Romario pulled a leg muscle, butchering Valdano's plans for the campaign, and following 3 consecutive La Liga losses, the Argentine coach was shown the door. When his replacement stepped in, it spelled out bad news for the South Americans, as the exciting young Claudio Ranieri was from a place where the nightlife antics of Ortega and Romario were deemed unacceptable. While Valdano would allow this behaviour given good form, the Italians saw things differently, and disciplinary demands were far stricter, leading to inevitable clashes. Ranieri recognised the quality of the diminutive Argentine, but couldn't see past his laziness in training nor his failure to follow instructions, for which he dropped Ortega. From here, things only deteriorated. He publicly criticised Ranieri's tactical choices, and when his path back to first-team footy seemed challenging, he gave up, focusing exclusively on getting to the 1998 World Cup fully fit. Regrettably, Valencia's hierarchy chose to dismiss the Argentine on the doorstep of the tournament, and considering the unfortunate end, as well as the club's lack of material success, Ortega's Valencia tenure was nothing short of disastrous. 4 years prior, he had been thrust into the spotlight when Maradona tested positive for ephedrine and sent packing, a space that the shy 20-year-old couldn't fill, and in the US, Romania knocked them out on Ortega's international debut. Redemption was on his mind this time, and repping the legendary number 10 of the white and sky blue, he was the talisman of his nation as he once dreamed. Arriving in France, Argentina were a considerable force, boasting world-class stars like Gabriel Batistuta, Juan Sebastian Veron and Diego Simeone, but all was set for Ortega to light up the grandest stage of them all. Jamaica were the first of his victims, capitalising on a shaky defence with a pair of strikes to demonstrate his supreme gifts, and running the Reggae Boys ragged throughout the full 90, ending 5-0 to the favourites. Clearly Ortega was a man of momentum, as he went on to stand out for Argentina, involved in almost 80% of the team's goals, fulfilling his role as the creative spark of the side. Their first major test came in the quarter-finals, drawn the similarly star-studded Dutch outfit, but Ortega entered the tie radiating confidence. Quickly, he came to realise his arrogance was misplaced. Coming up against Yapstam's unbreachable back line, he was unable to work his magic, and as the minutes went by, his short fuse was lit. Resorting to dirty tactics fools no one, and after taking a dive, his unanswered penalty appeals triggered Edwin van der Sar, and the rest is history. In seconds, the world had seen one of its most naturally blessed talents showcase the self-destructive tendencies that put a ceiling on his potential. The headbutt, red card and ensuing elimination was really the point from no return. The chains on his inner demons were too loose, and so instead of seeing offers from the juggernauts of European football, Ortega's options were reduced to Sampdoria, a Serie A club fighting for air under Luciano Spalletti. Deemed the replacement of Veron, his €9 million price tag came with great expectations, some of which he met, linking up well with Vincenzo Montella in his favoured deeper attacking role and bagging a useful sum of goals, with a deft chip over Italy's number 1 to stun the San Siro being the pick of the bunch. As ever, his extracurricular activities got in the way, and despite a return to form tally of 9 goals and 8 assists from 31 matches, he was dropped by David Platt, who looked to salvage Sampdoria mid-season by introducing fellow countryman Lee Sharp in his place, and in short, failed, as Iblucchiati were relegated to Serie B. Parma pursued him, thus he packed his bags to stay in the top flight, again Veron's fill-in, who joined Lazio. In the Emilia-Romagna region, he was reacquainted with his River alumnus, Hernan Crespo, who Alberto Melasani wanted to pair with his compatriot and push on from their UEFA Cup triumph for a first ever Scudetto. Valdenito by now was a proven marksman and continued to thrive in the blue and yellow strip, putting away over 20 goals throughout 99-2000. Ortega, on the other hand, wasn't so prolific, instead giving a disappointing output of merely 6 league goal contributions all season, opening the floodgates of criticism for the misfiring midfielder. The now 26-year-old had dipped his toe in Europe, playing for 3 different clubs in 3 years, and found little he liked. So instead of suffering as the scapegoat of Parma's failures, he went home to the club where he made his mark. Returning to River Plate, he felt the adoration that he'd been missing, still worshipped by the fans, to whom he was a living legend. On perhaps the only occasion where his timing couldn't have been better, Ortega entered as the 4th member of CUATRO FANTÁSTICOS, River's answer to Marvel's Fantastic Four, made up of Javier Saviola, Pablo Aimar and Juan Pablo Angel. The quartet were a glorious watch in that first season together. Ortega and Aimar, the diminutive tricksters on either wing, while Saviola and Angel shared the front line. They had been set up perfectly by Americo Gallego to pull apart defences and stack up the goals. This was River's Galacticos, a team still remembered in Buenos Aires to this day, who managed over 40 goals in less than half the games, but due to the injuries to Ortega and Aimar in the final stretch, it was rare for all four to be available at the same time, costing the team in the end. The inevitable breaking of the quartet came in the summer, but Ortega remained in red and white for the 2001-02 season, now the vice-captain, who continued the legacy of the Fantásticos with a brilliant year. A painful point left them second best to Racing in the Apertura, but determined for the crown, Ortega, alongside his young apprentice Fernando Cavanaghi, inspired Los Miloneros to seal the Clausura with a 6-point margin over Gimnasia. Having converted 23 goals from 56 appearances for River, he was back to his best, and Manchester United showed interest in bringing him to England, but the £7.5 million valuation was met by Fenerbahçe in May 2002, and so Ortega set sail for Istanbul. The dollar signs had clouded the minds of all involved, as almost instantly Ortega regretted the move. Turkey was unlike any country the Argentine had lived in before. Culturally and socially, things starkly contrasted to what he was used to, thus he became homesick. On the pitch, however, it wasn't showing, converting 5 chances himself and adding another 7 in assists from 14 Super League matches, a highlight of which was his strike in their 6-0 win over Galatasaray in the Intercontinental Derby. The club's broken promise of adding more Argentine players to the squad didn't help Ariel settle, and in April 2003, Fenerbahçe filed a complaint to FIFA as he hadn't returned to Turkey for 2 months after the international break. The governing body fined Ortega $11 million for breaching his contract and banned him from football for 4 months, leaving him clubless with no options but to retire. Having truly hit rock bottom, he returned to Argentina once more with a reputation now scarred forever, nicknamed El Burrito, the Donkey. Managing Newell's old boys, Americo Gallego bought out the rest of Ortega's contract, rescuing him once more, and after a 19-month absence from the game he loved, he restarted his career. Reinvigorated by an umpteenth chance, he tucked away a spot kick in his first match to claim the 3 points, and the informed La Lepra went on to lead the charge for the Apertura 2004. His mutual love affair with the city of Rosario lasted 2 years before the unignorable calls from River Plate came once more, and he ran back into the arms of El Monumental, where the man who a decade prior had offered him his first ever minutes still called the shots. Passarella, however, was unable to invoke the spirit of the hungry teen he used to know, as Ortega was now on a downward spiral, losing a battle with alcoholism. After weeks of his unruly behaviour filling local papers, his disease was made public, and River withdrew Ortega from the squad, putting him into rehabilitation for a month. Emerging a changed man, a signature chip to silence the doubters should have been enough to keep the troubled Argentine on the straight and narrow. But in the new year of 2007, when Passarella departed to make way for Diego Simeone, the 33-year-old lost some protections as the young manager was looking to prove himself as a coach, unable and unwilling to afford the costs that Ortega brought to the table. Binge drinking, missed training sessions and disorderly episodes had forced Simeone's hand, dropping Ortega from the squad and putting him on the transfer list by the time of their 2008 Clausura title. This was the lowest low, offloaded by the club that were always there for him, and after season-long loan stints at 3 local clubs, Ortega's 21-year-long career was drawn to a close. In mid-July 2013, his River Plate career was celebrated with a farewell match at El Monumental, jam-packed with emotion and passion as thanks were mutually shared between the fans and this troubled legend. A puzzling character, El Burrito Ortega is another of those if-only stories. In his prime across the 90s, he was an elite dribbler, known for having the best waist in football, able to dance past some of the world's best defenders, and on his day he couldn't be contained. Ultimately, Ortega was the most human of gods, who was talented beyond belief but inconsistent, whether under the light of Valencia's Mestalla or as the newbie of the Serie A. His irregular performances, overly active nightlife, and wild temperament quickly led him astray. With his demons always at the ready, he slipped through the fingers of every manager who tried to re-invoke the brilliance that everyone knew he had. And as his 20s came and went, he turned to alcohol, which put out any spark he had left. Whether it was to drown the ghosts of his World Cup red card or muffle the noise of the critics, the man once named Maradona's successor wasn't ever ready to take up that mantle. The European challenge is for some, but not all, and Ariel Ortega was only ever fit for one place: home. Amongst the fans of River Plate, mention of his name will forever spur on a chant, and though he never reached the heights everyone expected, Orteguita remains an important part of the club's soul as one of their greatest ever players.